Did I just add across?
So yeah, we can add our fractions, right? But in order to add fractions, what do we have to do? Common denominator.
Oh, man, I didn't see that.
So you have to multiply the top and the bottom by the denominators.
Right. So the easiest way is just multiply your two denominators together to get your common denominator. So secant of x minus 1 times secant of x plus 1. And then, yeah, remember what we do to the denominator, we have to do to the numerator. Excuse me. So we multiplied this first denominator by secant of x plus 1. So we're going to multiply the top by it as well. The second denominator we multiplied by secant of x minus 1. Hold on. So we're going to multiply the top one by that as well. Oops, did it backwards. Alright, so what can we do now?
You can simplify it. You can cross off.
No, I can't cross off because then I go backwards. I go back to what I started with. But I can combine my numerators over my common denominator. So I have secant of x plus 1 plus, now be careful, if that had been a minus, guys, remember, whatever's in the middle here needs to be distributed. So if it had been a minus, we would have to change signs, okay? So plus secant of x minus 1 over our least common denominator, or our common denominator at least.
So then you combine the top.
Yes. So then in our numerator, we can combine like terms. So secant plus secant is...
And then the ones cancel.
I'll look.
Yep, and then 1 minus 1 does cancel. Over, what could we do in our denominator? Could multiply them, right? So I'm going to do FOIL or distribute. So I get secant squared plus secant minus secant minus 1. Alright, so in our denominator we can combine like terms, right? Which those are just going to cancel. So we got 2 secant of x over secant squared minus 1. And trig function squared into 1. That sounds like an identity, right? So we got 2 secant of x over, what is it? Tangent squared. That's from one of our Pythagorean identities. Well, remember, if all else fails, change the sign and cosines, right? If all else fails, change all your what you can to sine and cosine. So what is secant? 1 over cosine. And what is tangent squared? So sine squared over cosine squared. And so we can keep it, change it, flip it, right? Now I'm going to go ahead and multiply these. I'm going to put 2 over the cosine. So we have 2 over cosine times, flip it, cosine squared over sine squared. What now?
You can cross.
That all equals.
Cross out the cosine.
Yeah, we can cross out one cosine from the bottom and one of them from the top.
And then multiply the top.
So I have 2 cosine on top. And I have sine squared on bottom. Well, let's see. What do we know? I'm looking at the answer. Y'all said y'all think it's A. What do we know about cotangent?
Cosine over sine.
It's a cosine over sine. So what if I split that sine squared up? Sine squared is sine times sine, isn't it? So we get 2 cosine of x over sine of x times sine of x. Well, if I do that, remember these are all being multiplied, so I can group them. There's my cotangent, isn't it? So I have 2 cosine over sine is cotangent, and then times, I still have a sine on bottom, so that's like 1 over sine. And what is 1 over sine? The cosecant that we needed. Okay, so we have 2 cotangent of x, cosecant of x, which is answer choice A.